mode on 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Schmitz. I represent the City of Lone Tree and serve as the chair of the DRCOG Transportation Advisory Committee. I call to order the February 23rd, 2026 DRCOG TAC meeting right on time at 1:30. And in this live in-person and live stream meeting format, members of public attending by Zoom have the ability to mute or unmute yourselves and share your webcam. For those attending online, please make sure that your typed name reflects your first and last name and who you represent. We ask of those attending to speak up, to use the raise hand button to ask a question or comment on an agenda item. If you have any technical questions, you can direct those to staff in the chat box. As a reminder to members and alternates here in person, please press the unmute button on the bottom of the mic stand. Make sure the light's on when you're prepared to speak and speak directly into the microphone so that you will amplify. Please announce your name and representation when asking a question or making comment for the record. During the business agenda, TAC meetings and alternates can speak or ask questions. Members of the public may only speak during our public comment period. DRCOG is sending around a sign-up sheet, so please make sure you sign in. And at this time, we're going to have TAC members and alternates introduce themselves. And just to go backwards for once, we're going to start this side with Cam. Go that way.
Cam Kennedy, DRCOG staff.
Frank Bruno, via Mobility Services, non-RTD Transit.
Dente Clamariam, City of North Glen, filling for Michelle.
Jeff Boyd, Housing Special Interest.
Matt Callison, Arapahoe County, City of Aurora.
Kent Mormon, Adams County, City of Horton.
Colton Roloff, Clear Creek County.
Vicar Jeffco, Lakewood.
Brent Sutherland, Arapahoe County, Littleton.
Zeke Lynch, Douglas County.
Chris Hudson, Douglas County, Town of Parker.
Garrett Slater, Boulder County, City of Boulder.
Jean Sampson, also City of Boulder.
Christina Lane, Jefferson County.
Brody Ayers, Aviation Special Interest Seat.
Carson Priest, TDM Special Interest Seat.
Carolyn Clam, DRCOG staff.
Jonathan Webster, City and County of Denver.
Palmer Braddock, Arapahoe County, City of Aurora.
Sarah Grant, City and County of Brimfield.
Tom Moore, Regional Air Quality Council.
David Krutzinger, City and County of Denver.
Justin Begley, City County of Denver.
Jordan Rudel, CDOT Region 1.
Marissa Gahan, CDOT Division of Transportation Development.
Miguel Aguilar, Southwest Weld County and Town of Erie.
Rocky McSalka, Jefferson County, City of Wheat Ridge.
Lisa Sakata, Environmental Interest.
Jacob Rieger, DRCOG staff.
Alvin Bilal Sanchez, DRCOG staff.
And Justin Schmitz with City of Lone Tree. All right, at this time, I'm going to pass it back to Alvin for some updates on staffing.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be sharing this with Jacob as well, but I'll handle the first couple. We do have a new alternate from the Adams County contingent, Greg LeBray with Brighton. So welcome to their third alternate filling their contingent. We also have filled what we call our non-MPO area seat. So this seat covers the counties of Clear Creek and Gilpin, as well as the area of Eastern Adams and Arapahoe, east of Kiowa Creek. Colton is here with us as the member, and Jamie Boyle will be joining us as well as the alternate. So glad to have that seat filled. Welcome to both Colton and Jamie. And then I'll pass it to Jacob to handle the rest.
Thank you, Alvin. So while we welcome new folks, we sadly need to say goodbye to a couple folks. One amongst our colleagues and one amongst our staff. I want to start with Matt Callison. Matt gave me permission to announce this. For those who don't know, Mac is retiring this month, after 35 years with the City of Aurora. So this is Mac's last TAC meeting. And Mac, I don't want to shine the spotlight too brightly, but I do want you to know how much we all appreciate everything that you have done for DRCOG, for this committee, for this region, for the city. You have been one of the leading lights in this region, a mentor to many of us. You have meant so much in all that you've done. We're really going to miss you. Your retirement is well earned and well deserved, but as you go, I want you to know just how much you will be missed and how much you've been valued. Speaking just a little bit personally, if I may, Mac was one of the first people to encourage me to apply for this, for this position that I have. And, and he was very positive. Even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself yet, Mac believed in me. And that's just who Mac is. He sees the potential in people. He sees the potential in situations. His guidance to us over the years has been just wonderful and, something that we've really valued and treasured. I'm really going to miss that. But again, just want you to know, Mac, how much you're valued, both at a personal level and at a regional level. So, Mac, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. It's really been a true privilege to serve with you, alongside of you with this committee. You're all a dedicated group that really have effectively advanced MetroVision principles and goals and objectives and actually produced tangible results for all our constituents, our region. DRCOG is unique in terms of Council of Governments and certainly our country. I want to say thank you to the Arapahoe County Forum, Transportation Forum, on the opportunity to be a part of what you do every day, every year. Yes, a handful of years, more than a handful. TAC is absolutely key in helping this become safer, more connected, more of a whole community with regional gains and delivering value and benefit to the entire community throughout the Denver Metro. I appreciate it. You're all good people, and you know it. It's been an honor and fortunate to be surrounded by all you. Thank you.
Again, Mac, thank you for everything. The sadness continues. We need to say goodbye to one of our staff. Today is the last full day. Tomorrow is the last day for Cam Kennedy. Yes, and we joked with Cam. So at DRCOG, you fully vest for our retirement after 7 years. Cam fully vested last week, and now he's taking another job. So we see how it is. But in truthfulness, he has been with us for 7 years, and I can't tell you how much so many of us have relied on Cam. He's our division assistant in our transportation planning and operations division, and we tend to think of those positions as support positions, and that's often how they're described. But in truth, there is so much that we couldn't do without the expertise and without the hands-on work of Cam. He literally does make the trains run on time in a sense. And I was fortunate to have at least 6 months in my new role with Cam. I wish it would have been 6 years. But we are so happy for where Cam is going next. Cam, I'll turn the floor to you to say a couple words, but I just want you to know how much we value you and how much you're going to be missed.
Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate it. Yeah, of course, I have to follow, the legend, Matt Callison. But yeah, I was recruited for a position within the federal government connected to foreign affairs and national security. So starting March 9th, I'm going to be in DC for my initial training before I go to Miami and then overseas. I've really enjoyed working here. Like I've told staff, when I started at DRCOG barely 7 years ago, I didn't know my BRTs for my UPWPs, for my TIPs. This was a foreign language to me by far, and I still wasn't necessarily sure how did DRCOG fit into all of this with the cities and the counties and the state. But I've just had so many incredible experiences with so many really dedicated public servants. And I hope to take that with me because I will now have staff of my own, which is a very humbling experience. And yeah, I cannot wait to see what you guys do in this region. You're doing amazing work with Regional Vision Zero, with Bus Rapid Transit, at the city, county, and state levels. And I'm just so excited, and I'm so grateful that I've been able to be in a small part on this committee. And yeah, please keep in touch. Thank you all so much. Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, thankfully, that's all the sad news I have.
I was going to cut you off if you had any more, Jacob. So, just want to welcome both Greg and Colton to the TAC. certainly bittersweet for Mac. I know worked together quite a long time at Denver in my role and continued Mac, and I think throughout everything you've always been an amazing professional. The thing I'm most sad about is our dress code's going to go down a little bit with Mac leaving, as he is the only one who's still wearing a tie in the meeting. But no, Mac, thank you for everything. And Cam, congratulations. Our federal government needs a lot more people like you. So appreciate you taking on that and look forward to hearing great things about your next steps. So with that, we'll move to the official and less exciting part of the meeting here, but we'll start with public comments. So we'll now open the meeting for public comment. Please remember, public comments are limited to 3 minutes each. If you've joined by Zoom, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button, and we will call on you to begin speaking. If you've joined by phone, please raise your virtual hand by pressing *9. We will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number, and then staff will unmute you, and then you'll need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone. You will have 3 minutes to speak, after which we will ask you to wrap up, and your line will be muted. As a reminder, after this public comment period, only TAC members and alternates will participate in the discussion regarding each agenda item. So with that, we will start in the room. Do we have any public comment in our room? Seeing none, do we have any online today?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll give it a second, but
We don't see any online.
thank you.
Thank you, DRCOG staff. With that, we will close our public comment and move on to our meeting summary. So this time we'll move on to the January 26, 2026 tax summary, which was included as attachment A in your packet. Is there any discussion, corrections, or questions about the January 26, 2026 TAC meeting? Anxiously wanted to change the agenda, we will move that as approved. We'll now move on to our business agenda for the day. And our action items today, we only have one action item, and that is item number 4, which is the 2026 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program Policy Amendment. This was attachment B in your packet. And Josh Schwenk, Senior Planner with the Programming and Project Delivery Team, will be presenting this item.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. We only have one proposed amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program this month. This is Senate Bill 230 funds, which are dedicated to the Clean Transit Enterprise. They have made 4 project awards for Denver, Douglas County, RTD, and Via Mobility, totaling $10,568,000. So this would just be to add those awards into the TIP. Happy to take any questions about this action. Otherwise, I do have a proposed recommendation available for you here in your packets.
Thank you, Josh, for that very long presentation. I appreciate that. Do we have any questions on this item from anyone or comments? I have someone who'd like to make a motion. Yes, Sarah Grant.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the Regional Transportation Committee the attached projects and the amendments to the 2026 to 2029 TIP.
I'll second.
Thank you very much.
Chair. I think I probably will need to abstain since we're...
Noted. Thank you, Frank. So with that, we have a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, would all those in favor signify by saying aye? All those opposed signify by saying no. Do you have any abstentions except for the one we already had from Frank? All right. Thank you very much. And Josh, thanks again for that presentation.
Thank you.
With that, we move on to our informational briefings for today. Our first informational briefing is item number 5, an update on the Metropolitan Planning Organization expansion. This is attachment C in your packet. Jacob Rieger, Division Director, Transportation Planning and Operations, will be presenting this item. Up there, all right.
All righty. Thank you, Chair Schmitz, and good afternoon, everyone. Wanted to give you an update on this project that we've been working on. We've presented this to our board to a very positive reception, but wanted to start looping you all in as an informational item because this will come back to you, hopefully in the next couple of months as an action item. So a little bit of context here about this work. We are required under federal law after every decennial census to review our MPO planning boundary. And so what we're looking for there, what federal law directs us to under 23 CFR is we're looking at the area in our region. So our MPO boundary is set by the area that's already urbanized or is expected to become urbanized over the next 20 years. That's the minimum requirement. We also look at areas where, there's like economic ties, mobility ties, strong linkages that makes sense to include other areas within our MPO planning boundary. So again, this is an exercise we do every 10 years. Under federal law, we can and sometimes must adjust our boundary to account for either those urbanized area geography changes or those kind of broader planning considerations that I outlined. So because of that, we have been engaged in some conversations with Clear Creek County and Gilpin County over the last several months on the potential of expanding our MPO planning boundary to include the geographic areas encompassed by Clear Creek County and Gilpin County, meaning that we would bring those geographic areas into our MPO planning boundary. So a little bit of context here about both counties. They're already part of DRCOG's state-defined transportation planning region. They're already members of DRCOG. They're already on our board. They're already part of our area agency on aging. They're already part of our comprehensive economic development strategy and our economic development planning. So this is not in some ways much of a change. We're not bringing in a brand new member. We're not changing the composition of our board, right? These folks are already part of what we're doing. They're part of DRCOG. This is more on the MPO and transportation side. Coming back to federal law for a second, remember I said urbanized area boundaries. The evergreen small urbanized area boundary, based on the 2020 census, actually has a piece of its territory, of its small urbanized area that extends into Clear Creek County. So under federal law, we'd at least have to deal with that much anyway. So that's at least a small but important prompt as part of this as well. And nobody needs me to tell you the strong existing links between both counties and the metro region. We all drive I-70. We all go to the mountains. We all recreate up there. Some folks live down here and work up there, vice versa. There's already really some strong ties between both counties and the greater Denver metro region. And then so finally, sort of summing this up, that we see this as potentially kind of a low cost, but a high return strategy to strengthen regional planning coordination and streamline transportation planning. And it's not often that we can do something like this. Usually when we start a new program or a new initiative, there's a lot of money behind it or a lot of expense behind it. This is something that's more about kind of streamlining things from a little bit of a procedural side, but will hopefully result in better outcomes all the way around. So a couple maps here. This map is showing in both the sort of reddish color and green together is the DRCOG area. So the area that we cover in our DRCOG planning includes everything on this map. The area in the reddish color is our MPO boundary. So again, a little bit more of the urbanized area of the region. So we include the urban metro counties. To the east, we stop at Kiowa Creek, so we don't include the much more rural areas of eastern Adams and Arapahoe County. And of course, to this point, we have not included Clear Creek and Gilpin County. I say this somewhat half facetiously and half true. If you go fly fishing in Deckers down in Douglas County, you're in the MPO. If you park at Staunton State Park in Jefferson County and start hiking, you're in the MPO. If you go to Castlewood Canyon State Park, guess what? If you drive down I-70 and you fight I-70 traffic to go to lunch in Idaho Springs, you're not in the MPO. If you go up, I don't know if anyone gambles, but if you go up to Blackhawk and you stay at the Ameristar in a 30-story casino and you recreate there, you're not in the MPO, right? So I think that's just sort of a little bit of a flippant way, but a truthful way of talking about the fact that there are some linkages. We do include some rural areas in our boundary already, and I think there's some merit here to include what are clearly some strong sort of economic and transportation ties over in Clear Creek and Gilpin counties within our larger MPO planning area. This is just another map, just some facts and figures about our overall planning region, but I included this map to make the point that I did earlier that when it comes to our area agency on aging, as well as our DRCOG boundary, that Clear Creek and Gilpin already included. So again, this is why this is in some ways such an attractive strategy. They're already members, they're already part of us, they're already involved in the things that we're doing. So this is an opportunity to bring them in just one more way. And then finally, this is CDOT's map that shows the 15 transportation planning regions. These are state-defined planning regions in the state. They include the 5 MPOs in Colorado and then the 10 more rural transportation planning regions. We don't often refer to ourselves this way, but it is true that we are not just the DRCOG MPO. We are the Greater Denver Transportation Planning Region. Clear Creek and Gilpin are already part of that TPR as well. So that also makes this administratively much easier. So after all that, just wanted to pivot a little bit to some current activities and some next steps in terms of what this could look like. We have had a lot of meetings and a lot of coordination, a lot of collaboration with the 2 counties and the local governments up there in Clear Creek and Gilpin. Those communications continue. I think folks from both counties are here today, so I won't speak for them, but I will say that I think the reception has been pretty positive. They can confirm that, but we're having those, doing that due diligence and having those collaboration and conversations. As I mentioned, we brought this to our board as an informational briefing, had a very positive conversation, very positive guidance and input from my board to carry this forward. As required under federal law, we've had recent meetings both with CDOT and DRCOG one-on-one to talk through the logistics of what this would look like and work through some technical issues, which I think was very positive. And directly under federal law, we're required to meet with what's known as our 3C planning partners, which is DRCOG, CDOT, and RTD. So we had this conversation as a sort of 3-legged stool. Even though RTD does not currently operate service up in Clear Creek and Gilpin, they are, one of our 3C planning partners. So we had that conversation together as well. Ultimately, under federal law, you all would make a recommendation, you would take an action, and the DRCOG board would ultimately take an action to approve this if they do and carry this forward. Under federal law, the process here is that actually the governor of the state, so Governor Polis's office in our case, would actually make this final determination, take this final act, if his office does, and then actually notify the federal agencies once that action has been taken. And that's all I have. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jacob, for that presentation. It looks like we have our first question at the very end here. Chris?
Jacob, thanks for the background. Generally, I think it's a good idea, but question to you that look ahead to the TAC and the dual model and the sub-regional. These 2 counties are like maybe 15,000 people. What percentage is it going to impact the model when it's said and done?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question and one that I expected. So let me be very clear and transparent. We have not done financial calculations yet to say, how this would change in terms of TIP sub-regional share allocations. But I want to be very clear both, to the metro side of the room, and as I look at the Clear Creek County manager, I want to be very clear as well. And I've said this to Clear Creek and Gilpin counties. Yes, there would be a small amount that would go to each of the counties if we use our same formula of population, employment, and VMT. That would result in a small share of dollars going to Clear Creek and Gilpin. Again, I don't want to speak for those counties, but I think the message I've heard back from them is that A, it's new funding that they don't have access to today, and B, even if it's a relatively small amount, every dollar helps in terms of some of the unique needs and challenges and opportunities that they have up there in both counties. To our friends in the metro, and to answer your question, I don't want to say it's a rounding error because that's flippant and that's not fair to Clear Creek and Gilpin, but it's whatever amount it's going to be a pretty small amount, again, based on our existing formula that is not going to make a dramatic difference in terms of the allocations to the metro counties.
That clarification. Other questions or comments? Sarah.
Sort of related to that question, Jacob, is would there be a potential increase to the federal allocation that comes our way with the additional open and clear added to our area?
A potential increase. I'm going to look at the back of the room, but I don't think so. Nope. Todd's telling me no. Good question. Now, again, though I should say, just to be clear and give a little bit more of a complete answer, again, the reason we haven't come up with numbers is because, this isn't definite yet. Things will change. We'd have to work through the formulas. We have a rough sense of the proportion, but we haven't calculated exact amounts. All of it is predicated on reauthorization. So in the big picture, I should make that caveat on this and obviously the tip conversations that we're having, that all of it is to be determined through reauthorization in terms of a fundamental change in funding amounts.
Other questions? Yes.
I'm Colton Roloff. I'm the county manager for Clear Creek County. I just wanted to thank everyone. This is my first meeting. For the MPO, we are very, very much interested, and it is not completely self-serving, right? We host over 10 million visits a year from the metro area. We host the world's, well, at least the state's most famous traffic jam. And our public safety system is 5 times bigger than it would be for a county our size. We didn't include our visitors. On a busy Saturday, we host over 50,000 people. And so that scale for a county that's very, very rural demographically, and obviously these are all important factors. We weren't talking about the financing here, but we just really are looking for us more to be part of the conversation, right? We have I-70 alone constitutes 8% of our developable land, right? It defines everything about our county. And traditionally, we have felt very far away from the metro area, even though Idaho Springs is about the same distance from downtown Denver as Castle Rock is. We feel far. That has changed a lot lately, post-COVID, and we really are turning east to our metro neighbors now to really try to be part of the solution to problems that we're having. I want to speak directly for Gilpin, but we share a seat, and I know they feel very much the same way. COVID changed a lot of the behavior we see of our visitors. We shifted from a out-of-state model to an in-state model. 75% of the people on 70 and who visit and recreate in our county, which is nearly in public land, live in DRCOG. So our success and our ability to manage that kind of load not only increases our quality of life, but the quality of life for everyone who comes in.
Much. Other questions or comments on this item?
Logistics question. What's the timing that we're looking at for incorporation in DRCOG? Is it 6 months or a year or 2 years?
Yeah, good question, Tom. Thank you. I'm not going to put an exact number on it because I don't know. It's ultimately up to the governor's office. What I will say is that, again, we're on a track where we think we're proceeding pretty quickly, where we can bring this back as an action item within the next month or two. The next step after that is that we actually draft a letter with documentation that we send to the governor's office through CDOT. So it goes to CDOT, CDOT reviews it, and then it goes to the governor's office. How long that takes, I don't know, but I will say that what we're aiming for is adoption of this by later this year. I'd like to have it done by the time we adopt our 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, which we're doing in October, Alvin? Is that right?
September.
September. Okay. Sorry, September TAC, you said? Yeah.
Yes.
And October board. Yeah, because, for our mapping, for our greenhouse gas analysis, for a few things, obviously, if we literally change our geographic area or territory, we need to reflect that in our maps and the work that we do in the RTP. So I'd like to have that done. So what is that, about 8 months or so away? So give or take, I'd like to have this done before the end of the year.
Yes, David Krunziger.
I will also remark that there's a governing body for the I-70 mountain corridor. The east slope is Clear Creek, Gilpin, Jefferson, and Denver counties. So that's another overlaying interest or reason for this that it makes sense to bring us together around management of traffic everywhere from the airport through the Eisenhower Johnson tunnels.
Hey, Brody Ayers. Question about 5310 and how that funding will work. Counties manage that, and then does this open up other doors, say like Rollinsville and the stops?
Sorry, Brody, say the last part of that question about Rollinsville.
So the mountain rail, right,
Yes.
is supposed to be a future stop in Rollinsville.
Yep.
So I'm curious how this might accelerate that or benefit that. And then the other side of it is human services.
Yeah.
5310.
So let me answer the Rollinsville part first because it's the easier part of your question. Shouldn't make a difference, doesn't matter whether they're in the MPO or not. Shouldn't, you know, because those are two separate processes. So I don't think one really has much to do with the other. In terms of 5310, I got to think about that for a second, but 5310 is based on urbanized area designation, whether or not you're in the MPO. So I don't think that would change. Again, I'll look back at Todd in the back of the room. Brody, I know you also used to do this work, but I don't believe making this boundary change actually changes the allocation of dollars because it depends on whether you're, you know, a small or large urbanized area, and that doesn't change. Anyone have any easier questions?
Jacob's looking for easy questions. Yeah, Justin.
It's more curiosity than anything. Was there a trigger for this? Like, why now? Was there greater urbanization that brought us out there? Is it, I mean, I understand about the connectivity in 70, and my question doesn't come from a place of skepticism in any way. It's just wanting to understand context.
Yep. There is a little bit of context and history here beyond what I've said. Didn't want to give you all a history lesson, but just to try and concisely answer that question, it was really two things. One is just the boundary review, as I indicated at the beginning, that we do after every decennial census, and I think that kind of prompted a little bit of conversation. I think the other one, to my understanding, was, and this was kind of before me, of course, but so we allocate MMOF dollars, and Clear Creek and Gilpin do get MMOF dollars. And so that we actually did a call for MMOF, as you recall, a couple of years ago now, give or take. And so just that kind of exercise, those ties started coming on stronger. And I think at least those two things together and maybe some other things started prompting those conversations and this idea of thinking about, you know, what could this look like and is this a good idea? So if Todd, Colton, anyone else, you know, can add to that history, but that's my understanding.
Can I respond to that comment? Yes. For us, at least, it changed mostly around COVID. We kind of got discovered. If we look at the traffic loads, not only on 70, that surge that happened, we are also looking at a point where Floyd Hill is a bit of a bottleneck at this point, and that's going to uncork, and all of that traffic is now heading to the Empire Junction, which is the middle of Clear Creek County. And so our feelings, I think, view this more of an opportunity for collaboration at this point. I think we are far enough away and distant. As far as the urbanization, I would say that largely, as much as that might hurt our case, it largely hasn't happened. Our flat land is so limited that our population hasn't grown in 20 years because we have no place to build. Partly because 70 paved over kind of the flat land we had. We are essentially the equivalent of West Virginia. Our average grade is 30%. And so I think the dynamics of how people are using Clear Creek County particularly, but also the 70 corridor, which has shifted a little bit from at least from the data that we see, from an end-to-end Denver Metro to Summit County to a day tripping. We see a lot more cycling of people out of the Front Range to and from throughout the county. And so we've also suburbanized, not necessarily from a population perspective, but what are our economic connections. Now, it used to be when we have a very large extraction industry in the county historically, roughly 50 to 75% of the workforce in Clear Creek County worked in Clear Creek County. Now, 80% of our workforce doesn't live in Clear Creek County, and 80% of our population that works doesn't work in Clear Creek County. So we've effectively turned more into a suburb, even though the dynamics of a population boom that generally would be associated with that kind of development haven't happened for us, mainly because we have no place to build. Between 70 and the public land, we are locked into that canyon. And so partnerships with the Metro are going to be how we start to solve some of these problems that are very, very challenging for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, add, Mr. Chair? I might just add as a little bit of clarification as well that while I don't want to minimize, if we do take this action, there would be some changes in some process that would need to occur, and I don't want to undersell that. There would be some things that we need to do, but we do already include some major projects. We effectively include Clear Creek and Gilpin in our 2050 regional transportation plan. Like, we have Floyd Hill in the plan. We have other projects from the two counties in the plan because they are part of DRCOG. So while we are not technically federally required to do that from an MPO planning perspective, we just kind of gone ahead and done it already because it's the right thing to do and it's easy to do. So my point in saying that is not how wonderful we are. I don't mean to sound like that. It's to say that if we take this action, the transition will be a little bit easier because we've already taken some steps down the pathway that we would take if we add Clear Creek and Gilpin as part of the MPO. So while there is more to do, we're not starting from zero.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. I was going to add that, when we went to the RTP, part of the conversation, right, was adding some of those highways, some of those sections that were outside the city core. I think this is consistent with that, right? We're starting to see why were some of these things not included, just because they weren't, right? Maybe, but they were something that everyone's traveling and using. So I think timing these out makes a lot of sense from my perspective. So, other questions or comments before we move on? Okay, with that, thank you very much, Jacob, for that presentation and all the great conversation about that item. Appreciate it. Well, as thank you very much, Clear Creek, for adding that great context. That was very helpful. We'll move on to item number 6. There's nothing on the 2029 to 2032 Transportation Improvement Program Policy document draft edits. This was attachment D and D1 and D2 and D3 and a whole bunch of additional attachments on your packet. Todd Cottrell, Program Manager, Programming and Project Delivery Team, will present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so as we sort of kicked off our process last month, I did state that we would start to bring stuff to you on a monthly basis, and we have started that now. So first off is the sort of the amendment to the TIP policy document itself. And last month we talked about how they were split essentially into major and minor comments. Major comments are those subject of future discussions with this body, in addition to the discussions that we're going to have with our TIP subcommittee group that met first earlier this month. So those discussions will come on a monthly basis, and we'll have those as they go along. We'll be able to answer any questions if you have them as we go along. The other sort of component to this large amendment essentially is the minor comments. So things that at least on a staff level, we don't feel necessarily sort of rise to a level where, we need to bring that to your attention. Of course, we can certainly have those discussions if you feel it's necessary. But everything that you see within the attachment is on the screen. It's also, again, contained within your packet. Staff has started to make those red line discussion or just changes to the entire document. Now, it looks like a lot. There is a lot. I would say a great majority of those are probably just wordsmithing and sort of updating the language that way. But there are a lot of things in here, again, not necessarily that may, at least on a staff perspective, we feel rise to that level of needing a sort of a separate agenda topic for it. We've also done something else. There's another attachment that you have in your packet. It's sort of a one-pager, and it's just sort of what we would consider highlights to the track changes that we've made to date. Again, just what we feel maybe are slightly more elevated. We tried to provide a little bit of explanation if that helps. But this is really your time to tell us sort of where exactly we are in the process. As it sits today, this document will come back to you. It might not come back to you until November or December timeframe. We are going to continuously edit this document through the conversations that we have with this committee throughout the rest of the year, in addition to those conversations that we have with the TIP subcommittee, which eventually will come back to you for full discussion regardless. So this document is sort of a work in progress until we get to this certain point later this year. This would be your time now to sort of let us Is there anything in here that you've seen that you would like to sort of pull out, have a larger discussion on, a full agenda topic at, later this month or, later in the year? Are there any clarifications that we can sort of make for you at this time? This is really your time to let us know sort of where we're at sort of in this process.
All right, thank you, Todd. We'll do a show of hands. Who read every page? No, I'm just kidding. But obviously, thank you, Todd, for that. I know there's a lot of data built in to this and red lines, but we'll open it up for comment, and then I'm assuming if there's comments after, we could follow up, Todd, with those, right, as well, if TAC members haven't had a chance to read through everything. Okay. So with that, open up for questions. Yeah, I see Chris Hudson at the end.
Thanks for the information. Looking through it, a lot of it's grammatical. It reads better. It's an evolution. The one thing that caught my attention was there's some shifting of some percentages on how things are going to be scored. And I assume this is going to be talked about at the subcommittee because I think that's a good forum to really start talking about it. But it has to do with the regional share criteria. They're not huge shifts, but they are proposed. They look like proposed. One's 10%, one's 5% here, and just a little bit of background. Where I assume this is coming from staff.
100%, yes. And there's sort of two layers to this. One is, yes, we've started the sort of discussion about the regional share and what that may look like in the future. But I think regardless of that, assuming that there's an application process for the regional share in the future, we started to look at sort of the weights and what, again, on a staff level, what we felt was a little bit more maybe important. I can tell you right now, one thing that we are going to really stress throughout this entire project or process is project readiness. Basically saying the last step in preparing your project should be filling out an application. What we ultimately want to do is we want to avoid delays. We want to keep your cost estimates intact. We don't want you to miss right away because perhaps somebody didn't read the plans correctly, and that maybe that's going to cost you an extra year on your timeline or an extra $1 million. We want to try to avoid all of those situations as best we can up front. So yes, there was an effort to shift that previous 10% weighting of the project readiness to 15% and then sort of reduce the leverage component. Again, subject of future discussions, but that's sort of what we have put out there at this moment. That help a little bit?
It does. I was just assuming it was part of the evolution of lessons learned from the last time through.
100%, yes. Yep.
Thank you for that question, Chris. Other questions? Yes, Tom Moore.
Hey, Todd, how are you doing? I wanted to try and tie together this section that's marked up. It says tip connection and implementation of the adopted RTP. So there's a list of categories: safety, active, air quality. Guys have eliminated multimodal mobility. You have one called reliability now, freight, regional transit. So those bullets in each one of those categories comes from the RTP. Is that correct?
Each one of the 6 sort of main categories are, I guess I was going to say, they are the existing RTP investment priorities. And I can let Alvin sort of chime in as he is going through the internal process to create that document and create that amendment, essentially. But there is the potential that some of those would shift in order to maybe incorporate more ideas and more thoughts on what is currently going on. So, for example, multimodal mobility, we would have the ability to capture that in other places. And the potential to add reliability, which really is sort of looking more at the maintenance component or the upkeeping of materials that are out there. So again, those are not final, but that's sort of where those investment priorities are sort of heading. A lot of the other information that's sort of with it, we try to, provide an example of what each one of those categories are, what it is drawn from, and then so what a TIP project may look like if it was sort of taken from one of those 6 priorities. Yes, Tom, go ahead.
On now, okay, great. So, I'm not completely aware of, I'm sort of one-trick pony on air quality, so I'm not aware of where these investment opportunities come from or priorities. We really need to, in addition to all the other, good goals of the TIP, we need to really attack the problem of reducing emissions in the projects that are funded. And it doesn't really say that there. It talks about improving and kind of general things. So that's what I'd be interested in working on in this plan, is to look at emissions per dollar spent. How much are they reduced? I request. Thank you.
Tom, other questions? Jacob, follow up.
Yeah, just to follow up to that. Tom, thanks very much for your comments. Understand the concept. I guess I do want to caution, though, that the work that we do on regional air quality conformity, greenhouse gas emissions, all of those sorts of things are at the regional level. Ironically, given I just presented on this, it's at the MPO planning area level, right? So it's a big regional calculation. So I do understand where you're coming from, but I do want to caution, I don't even know that we could, or how accurate it would be even if we could estimate emissions at the individual project level for this type of purpose. So not trying to throw cold water on your idea, just a little bit of caution as we go into it. Can we be careful what we ask for? Could we actually do it?
Thank you, Jacob, for that clarification. Yes, Justin Begley.
Thanks, Todd. I want to build on that earlier question just about the rating and for the weighting of the criteria and just see if I understand seeing the regional definition piece pop its head up here. I know that was a question in the TIP committee where maybe we just don't have a great handle on like what is a regional project, and maybe that's being reinforced a little bit here through the reduction of the weighting. And tell me if I'm off here. But when we go to the RTP investment priorities, and those are going up in this proposal, and then concurrently in the TIP committee, we're talking about potentially identification of a goal within that. Are those like reinforcing things here? Are we like really consolidating on a concentration of the region's dollars, at least to the regional share, into like one or a much more simplified approach towards funding a priority?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it all sort of goes back to the principle that the TIP implements the RTP. And that doesn't necessarily mean on a project by project basis, but the TIP implements the priorities that the RTP has sort of set out. And that is sort of one of the reasons why we feel like, how each project hits each one of those priorities, instead of weighing that at 50%, we could potentially see a world where that increases to 60%. And then, of course, to sort of take from that to make everything match up, bringing down the impact of the proposed project by 10%. And then we already, again, talked about the other 2 sections. So, again, I think there is a direct relationship throughout this entire process that we're really trying to re-emphasize sort of that there is a large RTP TIP connection.
Just my follow-up then is so maybe the goal is not, maybe I'm wrong, I am wrong about that. The goal is not necessarily amplified through Section B getting more weighting, because the goal doesn't necessarily have to be one singular investment priority, which becomes target for everything.
Right. I think we would use the same premise as which we've use in the past where each individual project, regardless if there was sort of a regional share goal attached to that or not, each individual project would still need to describe in their application how they feel they meet each one of those 6 investment priorities.
Yeah, Sequench.
Hey, thanks for the presentation, Todd. So specifically, I'm looking at page 29. It's a table regarding eligible projects and programs for the sub-regional share. And my question, I guess, might be a little too far in the weeds, so we could certainly defer the answer to more discussion at our TIP subcommittee meetings. However, I just wanted to know if you could share any feedback or context you have around the restrictions that were added here for transit service. And the second restriction in particular is, I guess I'll ask the question, is DRCOG intention only to fund pilot projects for transit and not provides potential for sustained transit projects in the future?
So just so everyone knows, I think these are the ones that we're talking about and where we had added proposed restrictions. The first is that your transit service must be defined within the application. So therefore, that would sort of mean that any pilot or starter services are not eligible included as part of a study. Essentially, this is feedback that we had received from both CDOT and FTA stating that in the application, we need to make sure that what you're proposing is what you're proposing. You can't just say, you know, service based on the outcome of a study. So we sort of need to separate those as 2 separate individual sort of projects into the future. So essentially, you need to know what you're applying for. You can't just simply say it's going to be based on this study. The second bullet here is the DRCOG allocated funding is limited to a maximum of 3 years. That's just a re-emphasis of what was already sort of out there. I think there's been sort of some things on the federal level back and forth where in some cases we could stretch that out to 5. But again, from our partners, our transit partners, we've heard that the maximum amount of CMAQ funding that would be allowable would be that 3 years. There is an expectation that after that, then you would continue funding that service locally if it was deemed necessary.
Thank you. Up next, Matt Callison.
Thank you, Todd, for the overview here. Got a question. I was reading last night in a section that was called Financial Capability and Commitment, Capacity and Commitment on here. And it referenced funds shall be available upon application, possibly another milestone, absence or approval or whatnot. What is the mechanism for establishing that commitment? I think it referenced actually within the budget. It's been budgeted. Funds are budgeted for the project.
I think we have seen in certain cases where, you know, an applicant may have defined that there's this much money, this much match is going to be available. And yes, they've said it's going to be available. I think what we're looking is to take it sort of a step further is, you know, it needs to be identified now before you apply, or at least it needs to be available before you're beginning that IGA process. And so, again, it sort of goes into preparing the best that you can for your project before you apply. You need to make sure that funding is identified up front and not just hope that something may come along later. Now, I think we do have language in there that's, you know, reasonably expected. If you're assuming that your match is going to be based on maybe some future sales tax, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but certainly make sure that it's, you know, earmarked for this project that you're applying for, or something like a group of projects.
Thank you for that.
Other questions? Yes, David Krutzinger.
David Krutzinger, City and County of Denver. On page 11, I'm starting to see a theme based on the other answers, but I'll ask my question anyway. On page 11, there's elimination of language around advanced construction to accelerate projects, and I just wanted to understand the logic for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So that paragraph and a similar paragraph on freight were in a section just called requirements and commitments for all TIP projects. Well, after reading this and having this text in here for probably 20 years, it's not really a requirement. It's something that an applicant can do if they wish. They can work that out individually with CDOT. So we kind of felt there was no purpose of having it in the policy when we're trying to sort of, outline some guidelines for those applicants who are applying.
Good clarification. Yeah, Rocky has a question too.
Add on to what Max said, just with the budget. Matching funds for at time of application, sometimes these applications are years in advance of us getting to an process, so that wording, because a lot of us don't have with that, so careful with that wording to not prevent that.
Understand, yeah.
Other questions, comments? Yes, Sarah Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah Grant, City, County of Broomfield. On page, I believe it's 15, the discussion about requiring a discussion and concurrence with CDOT and RTD, and I think that's really thoughtful and that needs to be included. I believe in previous TIP cycles, there was a deadline in order to send your request to CDOT or RTD. It would be nice to build in some extra time to put some deadlines around submitting requests to CDOT and RTD, allow for those discussions to happen, and have those responses back in time for the application.
Noted. That's a good idea. We were originally thinking what to propose was there needs to be a required meeting between all the parties, because again, sticking with this theme of sort of, development of your project and applying last, we wanted to make sure we had all parties in a room together at some point to discuss it. And as odd as it sounds, sometimes we don't typically see that. There's sometimes what may CDOT get as a last minute request they have never heard of before, and it sort of throws the entire system, out of balance a little bit. So again, what we're trying to accomplish is just getting everyone to know what's going on, and if you need support, ask for that early, but we can make sure the language is clarified.
Final questions or comments on this item? Hey, Todd, thank you very much. I know we'll have a lot more conversations about this in the subcommittee and in the next, and Jacob has a follow-up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Schmitz. Actually, just wanted to thank everyone who participated in the first subcommittee meeting, which was most of this room. We were so glad to have 30 plus folks in that first conversation. There's a lot more to come, but really do appreciate and do not take for granted people's time and thought equity into this. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
I would echo that as well, right? Jumping on that call for the subcommittee and seeing basically the whole task there. But, I think that shows the interest, like Mac talked about earlier and others, right? I think there's a lot of interest in trying to get this right and work together to make a difference. So, Todd, appreciate you taking the lead on this and getting us there. All right, thank you very much. That will move on to item number 7. That is an update on the Sheridan Corridor Safety Study final report. This is attachment E in your packet, and Nora Kern, Program Manager of the Sub-Area and Project Planning Team, will present this item.
All right, thank you. So this is one of our kind of first of the quarter plans in the TIP set aside, and we have finished the project and have a plan online if you want to read it, but wanted to just share some of the highlights because of kind of the nature of this corridor, and also hopefully some lessons learned for other projects we're doing or maybe you're doing in your own agencies. So just a quick background, the Sheridan Safety Study was part of our corridor planning program. It was nominated by Denver and Lakewood almost 2 years ago. It is in the 2050 RTP, which is why it's eligible for the corridor planning program. It's also one of our high injury network corridors. Most of it's a critical corridor. And I actually think it's one of the most multi-jurisdictional corridors we have in the region. So just the section we worked on, which isn't the whole section, it runs from I-76 to 285. There are 6 cities, 3 counties, it's a state highway, and there's a bus route, so obviously a very complicated corridor, and one that I think we've all kind of seen struggle over the years. And so the goal of the study was really to come together to identify some projects to reduce serious and fatal crashes on this corridor. And then a key part of that is really helping with that coordination, just given how complicated this corridor is. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but just at a very high level, we started this study in the fall of 2024. First, just understanding the corridor. We had a very robust community engagement and technical analysis just to get kind of our grasp around all the infrastructure and conditions out there today. Over the summer, we did a crash analysis. We were really focused on the serious and fatal crashes. So there's, you'll see in a second, a lot of crashes on this corridor, and we wanted to kind of stay true to our kind of Region's Vision Zero goals of really focusing in on those ones that are resulting in life-altering events. So we ended up doing site visits at 10 different locations in the AM, PM, as well as nighttime drive-throughs. And then this fall, last fall and this winter, we've been working through kind of a series of discussions to develop some recommendations. So just a quick flash of some of the key stats for this corridor. This was over a 5-year period, 2018 to 2022, over 4,000 crashes, over 152 serious injuries, and 17 fatal crashes. So unfortunately, this trend has continued, and it's definitely one of the most dangerous corridors we have in our region. Not too dissimilar, unfortunately, to some of the other corridors like Sheridan. The vast majority of crashes do not involve people walking, biking, and taking motorcycles, but of the ones that are serious, so again, those life-threatening injuries and fatalities, many of them are people walking, biking, and riding motorcycles. In fact, a majority, so over half of all the fatal crashes, are people who are not in cars, despite the fact that not many people walk on Sheridan or ride their bikes. So just a snapshot of the crash analysis, but you can see, not the rear end is the most common type of crash on this corridor. But when you zoom in on those serious and fatal crashes, you see approach turn, pedestrians, broadside, bicycle crashes are all well overrepresented. And so those are some of the crashes we tried to focus on through this project. Just a real quick snapshot of the community engagement. We had a lot of interest in this study. I think just given how many people live along and move along this corridor, it's definitely a key regional corridor. So we had over 5,000 website visitors and 1,000 different comments, surveys, input on our different maps. We attended 24 different events, so definitely shout out to some of the folks at the DRCOG team who helped staff all those different events, and talked to over 600 people in person, in addition to the online. Just a real high-level review of the recommendations process, but I think that the key takeaway here was it's complicated because one side of the road is Denver and one side of the road is not Denver for the most part, and so every decision had to be kind of reached collectively, along with CDOT, which of course owns most of the right-of-way. So started, with the existing conditions, then we developed those draft safety recommendations, and then had a final implementation plan developed that was really trying to stay focused on the safety and the highest crash locations. So I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the key corridor-wide recommendations that came out of this. First is multimodal lighting. A lot of the crashes, again, particularly those involving people on foot or on bicycle, are happening at night. And so we do see that as a kind of a early action item. One big recommendation is we are recommending a median or a hardened center line for most of the corridor. So for folks familiar with Sheridan, part of that is actually under construction next year, next to the city of Edgewater. But that prevents a lot of opportunities to limit those broadside approach turns and pedestrian crashes that we're seeing having such devastating consequences. We are hoping that can be paired with repaving and restriping. It's not imminent in CDOT's plans, but we're hoping it's not too far off. If you've ever driven on Sheridan, quite a lot of paving issues that actually contribute to the safety conditions out there. Corridor signal timing is another thing that I think Denver is going to take the lead on, we hope. It hasn't been done in a long time, so there's a lot of opportunities to make sure the signals are kind of best synced up for safe movements of all people out there. Sidewalks, big need, very challenging, but that was one of the key recommendations. And then last was bus stop consolidation. In addition, we have some kind of more detailed designs, cost estimates for hopefully some early action projects at Sheridan and 14th, Sheridan Jewel, that median project I mentioned. And then one fun thing is the Sheridan 29th, we were able to work with Wheat Ridge and they were repaving during our study. So we were able to go ahead and get some improved bike infrastructure and crossing infrastructure out there already. So that's always exciting. In addition to the kind of big picture projects, we have recommendations for 26 different intersections. 14 were updated recommendations from a 2021 road safety audit, 10 new intersections I mentioned, and then 2 intersections, unfortunately, that saw fatal crashes during the study or immediately before that we were able to add, even though they were in our kind of data set that we looked at. So for all these, we were looking, a big piece of this is looking at concurrent projects and making sure everybody knows what's happening east and west across the corridor, identifying those lead agencies, timeframe, and possible funding sources. So a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. I think this was a really fun project to work on, and it seemed like a great role for DRCOG to step into, just given how multi-jurisdictional this corridor is. I think we were looking at the 51 bus route. I'm pretty sure it's the most interjurisdictional bus route in RTD. Don't quote me on that, but it's up there. So just, you know, a great opportunity to bring everybody together. It's also kind of a unique opportunity for DRCOG to take a proactive role on one of our highest crash corridors, which is obviously such an important goal for all of us. Crash data was another piece. You know, it's kind of ironic that crash data, if you're going north on Sheridan, the Denver Police responds. If you're going south on Sheridan, Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, Lakeside responds. So sometimes Lakewood doesn't even have all the crashes that are happening on the corridor because it might have been Denver Police responding or vice versa. So just being able to kind of stitch together the full picture for everybody, I think, was definitely a great opportunity. And then looking at those larger projects that hopefully we can collaborate on. Challenges, backyard is maybe a little bit of a harsh term, but because it's everybody's edge, it's nobody's top priority. And so I think that was just a challenge. It's kind of a tragedy, the common situation, and definitely part of how Sheridan's kind of ended up how it is today. It's also a very narrow right of way and has very high traffic volume. So the pool of opportunities was relatively small. Related to that, I think one of the hardest things was that there's not any good way to widen the sidewalks on Sheridan, and that was the top thing we heard. There's either no sidewalks in some sections, or those 3-foot, 4-foot sidewalks next to 30,000 cars a day. So that's just a really tough part of this corridor. And then last, just the corridor length and coordination costs. It's tough to work on these really complicated corridors. So just some key next steps that we're going to be working on. We have some early action projects we're hoping to share with all the local agencies that can kind of be maintenance issues can be addressed, helping local agencies add the recommendations to their internal processes. So we've been working with Denver to get things into Denver Moves Everyone, for example. We are hoping to convene everybody soon to talk about applying for an SS4A or another large grant and see if that's a possibility. And then we are hoping to support convening of the police departments just to kind of make sure they're all aware of some of the data. So obviously this isn't a corridor that all of you border, but I think it was a really great opportunity for our corridor planning program. So we do hope to work with many of you on future projects like this, where there are multiple different agencies that we can kind of help convene and identify some next steps and path forward. So on that note, our corridor planning program, the next call for projects is not next year, but the year after. So hopefully if you have some ideas and if they're in the regional transportation plan, we can work with you on those as well. So happy to take any questions. The full plan is on our website if you want to check it out, but otherwise I'll leave my contact info.
All right, thank you, Nora, very much, and congratulations on getting through that process. Certainly a unique corridor out there on Sheridan. So questions? Yes. That's Chris, yes.
Nora, thanks for the presentation, and I haven't had a chance to look at the full plan, and so I have a question and a comment. First of all, really happy that you did address the sidewalk issue, because we do have, as you point out, we do have service along there, and probably some of the worst bus stops in the system, based on the fact that either, as you noted, there's no sidewalk or the sidewalk is substandard. And I think the picture you showed
the utility pole smack in the middle of the sidewalk also kind of demonstrates what's out there. So very happy that that was being addressed. So my question, though, and this is not even really related to transit at all, I think you said in there that there would be a hardened median, but that the segment from, and I didn't quite hear, I think it was like 25th to 14th would not have a median. I'm just curious what the reasoning for that was.
Yeah, it's the segment along Edgewater, and the reason it's not included in our project is because it's already in final design. So I think the segment 17th to 26th is going to construction next year.
So it's happening regardless.
It's happening regardless, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, other questions, comments? Yes, Justin Begley.
Only a comment, and that's just to say thank you for taking this corridor on. Denver may not have gotten to it for a long, long time, and for all the reasons you mentioned. And I also want to mention you had a graduate students as part of the project as well. So there's like a lot of wins in there, it sounds like, and just looking through the plan now, and all the things we know about Sheridan are shown in there, even with some recommendations. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I think, Nora, I just had one. I can't remember, is this the first one, or how many has DRCOG completed of these so far?
So we had our pilot program, which the Alameda corridor and the South Boulder Road corridor were part of, but since it's been kind of formally added to the TIP as a TIP set aside, this is the first one, closely followed by the Colfax BRT Next project, which I think is wrapping up in the coming months.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. So I think congratulations to DRCOG staff and team for, looking at these regional efforts. I think some of these corridors are just very challenging, and each individual jurisdiction, right? Sometimes it is hard to focus on those when you have so many things. So having somebody look at it from a regional perspective and maybe with a new set of eyes and goals is something. And I was going to ask Denver, but it sounds like it was a productive process, right? And it's just a unique thing, right? Having COG come in and lead these projects, I think, within individual. To date, all I've heard is success. So congratulations on that. And I think we're all excited to apply for them in the future and see what options we may have. So.
Not pay our chair to say that. Just want to make that clear, but thank you for the kind words.
That is true. I didn't know there was. No, I think it's something we've all been trying to find out, right? And everything we work together to make safety better is what we're here for. So, all right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much. No, I appreciate it. And our last informational briefing of the day will be item number 8 in your packet. The update on the Ride Alliance Stage 1 report out. This was attachment F in your packet. And Mallory Miller, Senior Planner with the Regional Transportation Planning Team, will present this item.
Hi, folks. I'm excited to talk with you all about Ride Alliance. I think it's been about 5 months since I last presented to this group on this project, so excited to share what we accomplished. So just as a quick refresher for those who are new or who may have forgotten, this is Ride Alliance's 3rd round of funding. We applied for the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation, or Stage 1 SMART grant, which is an 18-month grant opportunity designed to test and pilot projects in the region. And the reason we keep working towards this is by 2030, Colorado will see 1 in 5 people over the age of 60. And then 2 years ago, we had almost 12,000 trip denials in the region. So there is kind of an urgent need to figure out how to better coordinate transportation services and help reduce the number of trip denials in our region. So when we applied for this funding, we identified the following goals. We wanted to enhance the Trip Exchange Hub, which is essentially that coordination platform that you see on the left. So if you envision all those different colored bubbles are transportation providers, the hub is a central platform that allows everyone to connect in and exchange trip and client information. Additionally, we wanted to just test at least 1 trip type, integrate 1 transportation provider into the Trip Exchange Hub, and we wanted to help streamline the duplicative reporting requirements a lot of transportation providers face on a regular basis. So as we work towards this project, we identified kind of the following milestones that we work towards and how we help measure project success. So as you can see, we did pretty well with a lot of those goals, and I just want to highlight some of the key ones. So we secured memorandums of understanding with RTD's Flex Ride service, VM Mobility Services, and the North Front Range MPO's Ride No-Co project for participation in the pilot. Additionally, we made a lot of enhancements to the Trip Exchange platform. We made it super easy to navigate, enhanced reporting capabilities, made it really easy for providers. We got a lot of great feedback from those who participated in the pilot that it was a quick learning curve. Additionally, we were able to integrate 4 transportation providers into the Trip Exchange for participation in the pilot. So in addition to VIA, RTD's Flex Ride, and the Ride No-Co project, we also had the DRCOG Area Agency on Aging's Transportation Voucher Program participate. Additionally, we were able to integrate those providers through 3 different methods. So that was either through a direct API connection or through middleware, which helps translate the data that they have from their software to be compatible with the Trip Exchange Hub. Or we, as an alternative, we had like a direct trip import and export process. So through these 3 methods, we created a lot of flexibility for providers to participate, and almost any provider in the region could participate in the Trip Exchange Hub. Unfortunately, the Stage 2 grant opportunity was recently canceled by DOT. That would have allowed for up to $15 million over a 3-year period to really implement the Ride Alliance project. We did prepare for alternative funding options, so we're excited to, hopefully keep this project moving forward in the region. This might be a little bit difficult to see, but this is a screen capture of what the Trip Exchange platform looks like, and these are actual trips that were completed during our pilot testing phase. So you can see here at a glance, this is what providers would see when they would first log in. So some kind of key information about the trips and clients available. On the far right, they can easily claim trips, rescind trips they already claimed, mark that final trip status, whether it was canceled or completed. On the far left side, we have a lot of really cool filtering options to make it easy to find trips either by status, who submitted the trip, trips that you claimed, also funding source, eligibility type. You can also sort by client name. So lots of really cool filtering options there. Overall, just a very clean platform. And again, really, really easy for providers to navigate. So as we tested the Trip Exchange with different providers, we kind of identified these goals at the very beginning of the project. So we had a 6-week pilot, or 30 days in total that this pilot was operating. Our original goal was to serve 4 counties. We ultimately served 6. That included Adams, Arapahoe, Broomfield, Boulder, Denver, and Jefferson counties. We were able to integrate 4 providers into the Trip Exchange Hub through a variety of those integration methods mentioned earlier. So whether that was through a direct API connection, through middleware, or through the CSV trip import and export process. We tested more than one trip type. We had on-demand trips through that Uber API. We had wheelchair accessible trips and ambulatory trips tested over these 6 weeks. We wanted to have 99% availability for providers. So what that means is there would be like less than 15 minutes a day where someone couldn't access the Trip Exchange Hub due to like technical difficulties. We ended up having no downtime in the hub. Providers were able to access that at any time during the pilot. The one goal we did not quite meet was we wanted to test 100 one-way trips. We ended up getting 56 trip requests, of which 36 were completed. So the 20 that were canceled were client requested cancellations. This is honestly pretty common, at least speaking as a former transportation program manager for this time of year, with it being the holidays. And the population that we serve, so folks tend to get sick. They have doctor's appointments that they reschedule. Weather's not good that day. So not surprised at this cancellation rate. Just some additional pilot outcomes. So we had 19 unique clients who were willing to help us test this Trip Exchange pilot. A high majority of those were female. The vast majority of trips that were requested were for critical services, such as medical or nutrition trips, and then we did have a few personal trip requests. But I think the most interesting thing is that of those 56 trip requests, majority of those were cross-county trips. So that means clients wanted to go from, Denver to Jefferson County. They weren't looking to stay within their same county. So I think this just highlights the importance of something like Ride Alliance and coordination between regions, as we don't get our needs met exactly where we live. We need to travel across county lines to access critical services such as medical or nutritional. So just some challenges and lessons learned over these last 18 months. We had a very limited period of performance, so it was an 18-month-long grant, but by the time we actually got through all the contracting processes and hiring processes, we were in month 7 out of 18. So one of the benefits that we have from this period is that we have developed a lot of these contracting items for the next phase. So we have a really robust data sharing agreement, coordination rules for participation in the trip exchange, and so we'll be able to utilize these in future phases of the project. Another thing was a lot of the software vendors, private software vendors, were opposed to coordination. So they didn't want to adopt those transactional data specifications, which would make it easy and very cost effective to participate in the trip exchange. Again, this was something that we had anticipated, and so that's why we brought in that middleware to help translate the data and develop that direct CSV trip import and export tool to allow for any provider to participate regardless of if their scheduling software vendor is willing to adopt those transactional data specifications. Another lesson learned is just, to create more incentive for providers to participate by providing funding for trips being tested. We only met 50% of our trip testing goals, a little bit over that. So we did not market the pilot in the community. We didn't think that was necessary just due to the volume of trip denials and the amount of people we have on wait lists. And so a lesson learned for next time is to develop some marketing materials for clients to help show that this is a network of trusted transportation providers. These are what their services look like. This is how you can get in contact with them. And then also, I think just that pilot over the holiday period was a little bit of a rough time for the pilot. Last ongoing challenge is kind of the changes in the region since the last project iteration. So I think there was a little bit more of a greater spirit of reciprocity in previous phases of the project. But these days, with less transportation dollars being available, typically county dollars are more reserved for residents. And so this is something, that we're hoping to continue working towards resolving in future phases of the project. Lastly, so we did come in a little bit under budget for the project. And again, this is because we really weren't able to get started until like month 7 out of 18 months for this. So we applied for a project extension with DOT. This is still pending, DRCOG internal approval processes, going to F&B next week. But if that is approved, then we would extend this project through June 30th to help utilize that remaining stage 1 budget. And so with that approval, we aim to test at least one trip between the North Farm Range MPO's Ride NoCo project and the Ride Alliance region. Due to the limited time period of the pilot and some other challenges, we didn't have any of these trips tested the last phase. So we're hoping to test that these next few months to determine, long-term, how can we make this work. We have some additional trip exchange requests for enhancements that were identified during the pilot by those who participated. We're also hoping to continue some foundational work we started with building an API from Aspire, which is the Area Agency on Aging at DRCOG's main platform for client and trip reporting in the trip exchange. And the reason we want to do this is Aspire has a direct connection with the State Unit on Aging SUDS platform. And so this would allow us to use Aspire as kind of a middleman to help streamline reporting requirements. The biggest thing we're hoping to accomplish is build the foundation for a direct trip booking interface. So this is something that would be accessible to members of the public, such as clients, social workers, medical providers, family caregivers. and allow for people to directly book trips onto the Trip Exchange Hub and help kind of reduce administrative burden with staff having to always input those trips directly. And then lastly, we want to continue our stakeholder work group. We want to share out, some of those contracting materials we developed last phase so we can kind of hit the ground running as this project continues. And then again, we'll continue to explore funding alternatives to keep this project going in the region. Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
Valerie, for that update. Questions or comments? Oh, yes, Sarah Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Sarah Grant, City and County of Broomfield. Thank you, Mallory, for this update, and really exciting to see the progress occurring. I know it's been a long journey, and I know that Broomfield and Easy Ride is really happy to be a partner in this program. So looking forward to more updates. Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Chris Quinn.
Yeah, thanks, Mallory. Just a quick question, and I think you said of like the 56 requests you had, given the fact that it was, and I'm consolidated, were that or work itself out?
Yeah, there were no trip denials. So of those 56 trips that were requested, every single one was claimed by a provider. There were just 20 cancellations requested by clients. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Other last questions or comments on this item? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much for that update, Mallory, and appreciate looking forward to the next one. That completes our informational briefings for the day. We're going to move on to our informational items. And for this, we have item number 9, which is some updates on grants, which I'm going to kick it over to Alvin for.
Thank you, Chair. So these are items we won't present on, but we will point them to you. So we do have 8 forms in the packet that are for the build grant that's currently ongoing. This is one of the asks that we have from DRCOG's side. If you're looking for a letter of support from us, completing that form, making sure it's consistent with the RTP. So there are 8 forms in there for projects across the region. If you do have questions, please reach out to the applicant noted. And that's our one informational item. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Schmitz. Just wanted to add to that a little bit, given that I'm still relatively new in this position. Appreciate everyone who I've worked with on letters of support, and I think I've written 6 or more letters of support for this build round, and I wish you all the best of luck. Some lessons learned and some transparency for you all. If you want a support letter for a transportation grant, you will come to me directly, and I'm happy to work with you and help you out. I will appreciate a template, which most of you provided, and it does make my life a bit easier, and presumably you're asking for support letters from other folks besides just DRCOG. So if you can give me a content template, then I work to put that in our DRCOG template, add some of our language. I have our executive director take a look at it just because it's going out under our agency letterhead. I have you look at it to make sure you're okay with the way I've modified what you originally gave me. Then once everyone's good, I sign it electronically and send it back to you. So just wanted to be transparent about how that process, which I think is pretty similar to what my predecessor did, but that's how it's working now and will work going forward.
Thank you, Jacob, and that sounds good. Okay, well, we will move on to administrative items. We'll start with any member comments or other matters that were not on our agenda today. Barely takers on that item. So, but for that, I'm actually going to now pass it back to Alvin for some final announcements.
Just a final thank you again to Mac and Cam for all your work in the region.
Last words, Mac, or? Nope, I didn't figure that either.
What he said.
Well, congratulations once again, Mac, on a well-deserved retirement, and I think we're all excited to see what you do next as well, so glad to hear about it. Okay, well, with that, we are going to adjourn our meeting today at exactly 3 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next month. Oh, yes, and I got reminded